Hello and welcome back to Cult Leader. I'm your cult leader, Spencer Henry, and Cult Babes, you know what I love besides a good whodunit? A good who the fuck did I marry? You know what I'm talking about. We talked about this recently. I feel like whenever one of those pops up on my TikTok, I immediately have to scroll past it if I'm even remotely busy, because otherwise I will absolutely get sucked into a 40-part series on 2x speed or 2 times speed. How do you say that? I don't know. Are you listening to me in 2x right now? Triple X, anyone? But you'll lose the entire day, right? I've seen ones about husbands with secret lives, secret wives, secret kids. I've seen ones where husbands were secretly chatting with minors online, and I love when they get caught. And then others doing straight up criminal shit. The list goes on. And you'd think that with like public social media, background check sites, and all the tricks we've picked up on from Neve and Catfish, we'd be better at vetting people. Right? But the first step is even suspecting something is wrong, Cult Babes, and then you have to admit it to yourself and you actually have to stay alert. You gotta watch for the red flags, you know? And a lot of the time, those suspicions get ignored, either out of fear or out of blissful ignorance. Doesn't matter. There's people out there. They're lying to you. They're selfishly wrecking other people's lives and a lot of the time getting away with it. And today's story is, let it serve as a cautionary tale. Bonjour, Cult Babes. We're in France now. Keep up, okay? We're in the small French town of Lons-le-Saunier in the Jura region. And that's where on February 11th of 1954, a man named Jean-Claude Romand was born, and he was an Aquarius, the quiet, inward, lives in their own head sign. That's what I kept seeing people say about him. According to astrology, okay, and that tracks, I guess. Jean-Claude was born there, but he grew up just a few miles away in the even quieter village of Clairvaux-les-Lacs, one of those places where everyone knows everybody. He was apparently known as being polite, quiet, nothing dramatic or memorable, just very, very normal. Background character energy. He went to the local lycée, basically French high school, in Lons-le-Saunier, and eventually got his baccalaureate, the diploma that's supposed to mark the official start of university and real adult life. On paper, everything looked steady and very predictable for his normal, simple life. He was following the very expected path. In 1971, right after high school, he made a big, ambitious move. He signed up for this super competitive prep program in Lyon, where the top students go to launch their shiny professional careers. He lasted 1 semester, and then he quit. And he didn't want anyone to know why. Instead of talking to anyone about it or admitting it, the simple fact is and was that he struggled and dropped out. He instead pivoted to something that sounded way more impressive than this prep school, medical school. That way the story wasn't, I failed and I gave up. It was, oh wow, he left to go to med school. An instant upgrade, right? Impressive, some might say. But in 1974, when it was time for the big second-year medical exam, the one you have to pass to stay in the program, he just didn't go. Straight up, didn't show up, didn't take it, nothing. Didn't even acknowledge it. I mean, sure, you technically can't fail a test you never take. That seems to be the logic that he was going with in this case. Instead of dealing with that, he lied again. This time, he didn't even bother with another pivot. He just told his family, I passed that test. I did it. Congratulations to me. And after that, Jean-Claude slipped into this bizarre routine that would go on for more than 10 years. He kept re-enrolling in second-year med school year after year, but never actually took the exam that would let him move forward. It was like he was just stuck. And I'm like, how did he not get kicked out? Like back then, I guess the system was pretty loose. If you didn't officially fail, you could just sign back up again. So he used that loophole and basically parked himself in this weird limbo where he was in school, but not actually going anywhere. It was just fucking bizarre, you guys. And because he was still technically enrolled in the school, everyone around him assumed he was progressing like normal, right? Like, okay, he must be almost done soon. Right? But the reality was the exact opposite. One thing that made this easier for him was his personality, because he was naturally private and everyone wrote it off as like, oh, that's just how he is. You know, he's just this quiet guy. He keeps to himself. When someone is quiet and polite and doesn't offer a lot of detail, most people don't push or prod. They just kind of let it slide. So he got away with a lot just by being vague. A good lesson in shutting the fuck up. Sometimes people leave you alone, right? Couldn't be me. Never know when to stop talking. Over time, he realized that he could fake an entire professional life that way. Give a few blurry details, act confident, and people wouldn't notice the gaps. And as the years went on, the fake resume that he was selling got bigger and bigger and more ridiculous. It stopped being just, yeah, I'm in med school. He started claiming things that in France basically scream prestige. First, he said he had gotten into the Paris Internet, which is this brutal national exam that decides who gets to be a hospital resident and where they train. Saying I got the internet in Paris is like saying I crushed the hardest test and landed a top residency in the fanciest city. And then he told people he was working at INSERM in Lyon, the big public medical research institute, INSERM. And after that, he upgraded again. He said he'd been sent, like specially chosen to go to the World Health Organization in Geneva as a senior researcher. Like, okay, big shot. He's not even just like trying to get by on just like a normal little lie, like, I'm the town doctor in this town you haven't heard of. He's like, nope, top dog right here. Pro researcher. There's always this like admiration I have for people like Jean-Claude because they lie in a way that you can tell they believe it too. You know what I mean? I'm trying to think of like a great example in my life. I know when I was younger, this automatically is what pops up in my head is there was this girl, I feel like we were middle school age probably, and she would lie about just damn near everything from her age to where she was from, her situation at home. And it's like the older you get, the more empathy and sympathy you have for a person like that because you're like, damn, like what happened in your life or like what is going on internally that is causing you to lie like that? We've all told a fib. We've all told a white lie. But this girl in particular, like I've always remembered because of that. Anyway, I think eventually we figured out she was lying and it was like a very weird situation because we're like, why are you doing that? But I love a liar who believes their own lies. And I love a liar like Jean-Claude because it's like, he is lying to the ultimate degree in which you can lie to. No, because you know what is I do love a story of a liar. Who was that woman? Oh my God, I'm blanking on her name right now. Was it Tanya who pretended to be in 9/11? Like she pretended to be a victim of the World Trade Center disaster. And she's in there and she is like talking about like, yep. And then the plane fucking hit me, right? She's like, it pushed me against the wall. I lost my fiance and none of it was true. None of it existed. Oh my God. That's probably one of my favorite cult leader stories to date. The episode was Tanya Head's survival story. It's truly one of my favorites to this day. And I almost wish they would do like a comedic remake starring like a Melissa McCarthy, right? Okay. I picture Melissa McCarthy. Yeah. Melissa McCarthy. There's also a documentary about the story. I think it's called like The Woman Who Wasn't There. A spoiler alert. And it's just such a fucking wild story. But love a liar above all else. Okay, now back to this story. So he's lying to everyone, right? He is like, I am working for the World Health Organization, right? My ass is going to Geneva. I'm star of the show. Nobody's ever been a better doctor than me before. Best doctor in the world. Best doctor to ever do it. So important. Such a great doctor that they're sending me to the World Health Organization in Geneva as a senior researcher. Jean-Claude, you little devil. So now they're like, oh, people around him are probably like, this is a fucking big shot. Okay, this is the big cheese here. But this was also the point where his identity and his actual life finally split in two. The version he showed the world was a brilliant doctor and researcher totally plugged into the medical elite. But his real days looked nothing like that, obviously. He spent hours sitting in his car in random parking lots or wandering through the woods alone, plotting his next lie. Some might call that hiking. Sure. Other days, he camped out in the World Health Organization's public library, reading medical journals that he wanted people to believe he'd contributed to. With all this time and effort spent lying, you'd think he would just take the fucking exam, right? And make it real. Like, hello, I think a lot of us, when we drop out of school, it's because we don't want to actually do the work, but you're doing the work over and over and over again and just not finishing. I don't get it. I'm like, I just didn't want to be there. And that's a lot of effort to keep up with all those lies, right? Whenever anyone questioned him or got a little too close, he would protect himself with another lie. And when his girlfriend and some friends started getting suspicious, he created the ultimate distraction, a fake cancer diagnosis. It's giving Real Housewives. He fucking took it to the lowest level you can actually take it to. He claimed he had a rare form of lymphoma, which instantly gave him cover for headaches, exhaustion, irritability, basically any moment where he needed people to stop asking follow-up questions. A stress-induced migraine was his emergency exit door. It kept everyone from fact-checking, which was his, of course, absolute worst nightmare. If you're worried about people fact-checking you, there might be something wrong. Something might be amiss. Okay, that might be a you problem. And the fake illness, this cancer diagnosis, didn't just protect him, it fed his addiction for attention, because just like he loved the admiration he got for his made-up accomplishments, he realized he loved the pity and the emotional attention that came with him being quote-unquote sick. The care, the concern, the admiration for his supposed strength. He ate that shit up with a spoon, you guys. And at this point, it's pretty clear he loved the game of manipulating people around him. And then in 1980, he used that manipulation to head to the chapel. That's right. He married this gal he'd been seeing named Florence. And she wasn't usually a gullible person. She was actually really smart. She worked in actual medicine as a pharmacist, but she never questioned his stories or his illness. She trusted him wholeheartedly. She thought he was polite, dependable, and deeply committed to his research in Geneva. And he had cancer. What was she supposed to do? How could she say no to his marriage proposal? Well, they ended up getting married and quickly started a family, a daughter and a son. Caroline was born in 1985 and then Antoine in 1987. And from the outside, they looked like a totally normal family, living near the French-Swiss border. This dream life. But the double life Jean-Claude was leading just kept stretching further. At home, he acted like a loving dad and successful doctor. But as soon as he stepped outside, he went back to the empty routine of long, pointless drives across the border to the World Health Organization, killing time in the library, hiding in plain sight, and then going home like he'd spent all day curing diseases and saving lives. Other than the relentless lying, nothing super dramatic was happening during these years. But every new lie added another thing he had to keep up with. A new plate he had to keep spinning. Every day he didn't confess made it harder to even imagine telling the truth. And now he had a wife and 2 young kids who only knew the fake version of him, which meant the cost of being honest was getting higher and higher. He was drowning in his own ocean of lies. And where was the salary from this imaginary research career coming from? That was my biggest question, because I'm like, you meet a man and he's telling you he's a doctor. Where's the doctor money? Okay. Well, first of all, he lived off the money from selling an apartment that his parents had bought him. And once that dried up, he quietly drained his parents' savings account with regular withdrawals. And then there was Florence's pharmacist salary coming in. And on top of that, he pulled money from friends and in-laws who thought he was investing their savings in special Swiss accounts with unbelievable returns. We're talking 18% interest. Sounds too good to be true because it's too good to be true. Okay, nobody ever saw a single document. And whenever anyone asked, he blamed Swiss banking secrecy. He's like, you don't want to get caught, do you? I mean, and it's hard to, like, you kind of get it. Right? Because you're like, if you had this super smart person in your life, they're like, this dude works for the fucking World Health Organization. Okay, he's in fucking, they brought him to Geneva, which I don't know much about Geneva, but it sounds like they mean business if they're bringing you there, okay? They're bringing him to Geneva and they are giving him, you know, he's writing research in medical journals and shit. That's someone you trust when they're like, hey, I got some investments. You want to make some investments over here? I know how they've got a crazy return rate right now. Like, you kind of trust that person, which is really the fuck of it all. Right? We trust these people who claim to be in certain positions of power. You trust a doctor, right? Because we're told we're supposed to. We should trust the doctor. But what happens when they're not even a doctor? I'm going to tell you, but not yet. So in addition to the fake career he was leading and the fake cancer he was suffering, he was running a whole financial con. I mean, I would say who has the time, but he did. He had the time. Nothing but it, actually. The financial con actually brought on some drama, though. So one of the people that he had taken money from eventually started catching on. And that was Florence's father, Pierre Crollet. Pierre even asked for part of his investment back. And then in 1988, something strange happened. He fell down the stairs while he was home alone with Jean-Claude. Suspicious? You tell me. Rescuers later said they heard Pierre trying to say, "Jean-Claude, did something happen to me?" before Jean-Claude slipped an oxygen mask over his face. Pierre never recovered from the fall and he died a few days later. What was he trying to say? Jean-Claude did me dirty? I don't know. That's my best guess, but who knows? The law didn't think it meant anything, and his death was ruled an unfortunate accident. Jean-Claude then took charge of the funeral arrangements. He organized a memorial fundraiser and apparently feeling quite proud of himself, gave himself a huge tip and redirected the money straight into his own pocket. This guy is fucking unbelievable. If you thought you dated a shitty person, I mean, he's got to take the cake, right? As the years went on, Jean-Claude just kept running the same routine and the same lies, wandering around, camping out in the World Health Organization library for hours, reading medical journals. For some of his supposed foreign missions, he would just go to the Geneva airport, stay in a hotel for a couple of days, and then read travel guides about the places that he had pretended to visit so that he could come back and talk about them. He was fucking dedicated to his craft, I'll give you that much. He was fully living a made-up life, and everyone around him treated him like a respected, self-sacrificing, altruistic doctor with rare cancer. Family, friends, neighbors, they all asked him for medical advice for themselves and their kids, and he gave it, knowing full well he wasn't a licensed medical doctor. I mean, he'd read enough fucking magazines, though, enough medical journals. I still don't know. I'm like, just fucking go take the test, man. But I guess at that point, is it like, is it going to be weird if the dates say something different than you've been telling everyone? Or I guess that doesn't matter. I don't fucking know. But the money pressure was really starting to close in. That's always the root of it, right? They need more money. It was getting harder and harder to hide when all these relatives were coming forward asking about their investments. And the holes in his finances were getting too big to patch. That's when Florence, his wife's, suspicions really started because she noticed that he was being really evasive, more than usual, very defensive, and weirdly secretive. And she still didn't even know half of what he was hiding. She didn't know a fucking 20th of it, okay? But she knew that something was off with her husband. She even joked to a friend that maybe he was a Russian spy because to her, that actually seemed more believable than the truth. In reality, he was lying, cheating, and basically funneling money out of everyone he knew, including the other woman. By late 1992, even his mistress was done. She demanded he pay her back her 900,000 francs investment. And around the same time, someone else raised a red flag. The president of the children's school needed to contact Jean-Claude about something for the school board they were both on. So he checked the WHO directory, the World Health Organization directory, to look up his info, and surprise, no Jean-Claude Romand anywhere. He told Florence because it seemed odd, but she brushed it off. She said that she couldn't contact him at work either, that he couldn't be bothered while he was in the middle of important research, and if she needed him, she had to page him, and he would call back when he had time. She knew this sounded a little suspicious when she said it. She knew he wasn't listed. She didn't push the thought. Okay? During the holidays that followed, relatives noticed Florence seemed unsettled, quieter, troubled in a way they couldn't quite name. Looking back, it was clearly the doubts about Jean-Claude finally sinking in, and he could not have that. He wasn't about to watch the whole thing collapse. He'd spent years constructing this fake life, and now people were asking questions, his wife included. He couldn't handle the idea of it all coming crashing down. It was right after New Year's, in that first week of January of 1993, that he started to spiral. He took about 2,000 francs out of ATMs around town and randomly handed 500 francs to a homeless man, and then he borrowed his father's .22 caliber rifle and went on a shopping spree. He bought tear gas, rifle cartridges, a silencer, and an electric stun device, and asked for them to be gift wrapped. He also pre-ordered medical supplies from a pharmacy for pickup. He was clearly gearing up for something, even if no one around him knew it. The receipts did. On the night of January 9th, 1993, he and Florence were at home in their bedroom. I don't know what was said that night. I don't know if there was a fight or just tension between the two of them, but at some point he went into the kitchen. He picked up a rolling pin and clocked Florence over the head with it. Blunt force trauma hard enough to kill her. He then picked her body up and put her back in bed like nothing had happened. To anyone walking in, it would look like she was just still asleep on a winter morning. The next morning, January 10th, he switched straight into normal dad mode. He woke up, got the kids up, let them watch their morning cartoons, keeping the morning routine as familiar as possible, which somehow makes the whole thing even more horrifying. Their parents' bedroom doors stayed closed, and he didn't explain, so they probably just assumed mom was sleeping in. At some point, he sent Caroline upstairs to do something, and then followed her. Jean-Claude then held Caroline down and shot her in the head with his father's .22. He pressed against a pillow to muffle the sound. He didn't want the shot echoing through the house and alerting anyone, especially Antoine, because Antoine was next. Same setup, same method. The kids thought they were having a lazy Sunday morning with Dad. Instead, they were mercilessly murdered. He left their bodies there, in their rooms, just like Florence's, and then he left the house. He got in his car and drove to his parents' place for Sunday lunch. When he arrived, everything was so normal. They had no idea what he had just done, or what he'd been doing for decades. Greetings, small talk, the usual weekend visit, and at some point he told his father he'd noticed a problem with a pipe and asked him to go upstairs and take a look. Totally believable. The dad probably thought it was a simple house stuff, maybe even a little bonding moment. It's just two dudes talking about laying pipe, right? But once they were alone, Jean-Claude shot his father. His mother heard the noise and she ran in to see what was going on. Then he shot her too. Both parents were dead within minutes. He even killed the family dog. Sorry, girls. The dog was completely innocent, but he wasn't leaving anything or anyone alive that might connect back to him. And somehow, even after killing his wife, his children, his parents, their dog, he still wasn't done. He still wasn't satisfied. He went to pick up his mistress for dinner. He was a solid 3 meals a day kind of guy. And he made it sound glamorous. Oh, we were invited to a fancy countryside dinner with Bernard Kouchner, the French Minister of Health. It's a huge honor, right? We must go. And the mistress, she fully buys it. This is coming from a man who she still believed was a respected World Health Organization doctor. So she gets in the car and off they go for this glamorous night out. On the drive, he pretended to get lost and pulled over in the Fontainebleau forest. What she thought was a quick detour turned out to be a setup. He attacked her with a cord, tear gas, and a stun gun, pretty much every tool in his little moidah starter pack. But even with all of that, he couldn't overpower her. She fought back and managed to escape. Always fight back, cult babes. And here's the wild part. When she got free, he immediately flipped back into charm mode. He apologized, minimized, smoothed everything over, and somehow convinced her not to go straight to the police. Girl, that's more than ignoring a red flag, okay? After that, he went home like nothing had happened and spent the rest of the night watching TV. Sometime around like 4 o'clock in the morning, he swallows a bunch of very expired barbiturates he had lying around. And then around 4 or 5 in the morning, he pours gasoline all around the house and sets it on fire. Road workers driving by saw the flames and called it in, and firefighters arrived within minutes, and they actually managed to pull Jean-Claude out alive, much to his probable chagrin, but he was unconscious and in bad shape. He was rushed to the hospital where he slipped into a coma. Meanwhile, the autopsies on the bodies told the real story of what happened. None of his family had died in the fire. The children had been shot. Florence had been beaten to death. And the blaze was just theater, a way to make it all look like a tragic accident. Once police started pulling at the threads, everything unraveled over the next couple of days. They contacted the World Health Organization and got the answer everyone was afraid of, but had assumed. No, Jean-Claude Romand had never worked there. He'd never given lectures. He wasn't even a fucking doctor. And around this same time, his mistress came forward anonymously and reported everything. The fake investments, the attack in the forest, his attempt to kill her. And when the police went to check on his parents, hoping to interview them, they found their bodies too. Their corpses just fucking rotting there. And at that point, all 5 deaths pointed straight to Jean-Claude. Who else could it be? When he finally woke up from his coma, he refused to talk. He kept his mouth shut and played dumb for as long as he could. But eventually, little bits of confession slipped out. And then he admitted everything. Of course, he framed it all in the most self-serving way possible. He had killed his entire family because he was terrified of them finding out the truth. Yes. He's the victim here. Okay, according to him, if they discovered all his lies about the job, the degrees, the cancer, it would kill them emotionally. So in his head, if he got to them first, he could save them from the pain of disappointment. That was his logic. A real fucking genius, this guy, right? Reportedly, the only time he even showed a flicker of guilt was when he admitted to killing the family dog. His trial started on June 25th of 1996, and he barely spoke throughout. He mostly sat there with his head down behind the glass defendant's box they use in French courts, looking pathetic and quiet while lawyers, experts, and witnesses argued over his fate. On July 6th of 1996, the verdict came in. Guilty on all counts. He was convicted of murdering his wife, his 2 children, his parents, and of attempting to murder his mistress. The court sentenced him to life in prison with a minimum of 22 years before he could even be considered for release. And listen, we don't diagnose people here, but it's been reported that some psychiatric experts who examined Jean-Claude said his personality lined up with narcissistic personality disorder, including grandiose fake self-image, plus no real empathy and the constant need for attention and admiration, all held together with layers of lies. It all fits the bill. Regardless, he was sent to the high-security prison of St. Maur. Over time, he built up a reputation as a model prisoner. He leaned hard into religion, became very devout, and got obsessed with Gregorian chant, the old school church music, you know, the... He studied it, he sang it, and reshaped this image of himself as a quiet, spiritual man behind bars. Inside prison, he also worked a technical job restoring old audio recordings for the INA, the French National Audiovisual Institute. And on top of that, he trained other prisoners in audio restoration, like a calm, rehabilitated mentor type. All of this helped lead to a parole decision in April of 2019. A court in Bourges agreed to let him out under very strict conditions. On the night of June 28, 2019, he was released quietly and taken straight to the Abbaye Notre Dame des Fonts-Gombault, a Benedictine monastery where he was to remain with an electronic ankle monitor on, like an early 2000s celebrity on house arrest, okay? His movements would be highly monitored, and the ankle monitor made sure of it. He was under their control still. There, he didn't live directly with the monks, but he stayed in the guest house attached to the monastery. He joined in the daily rhythm and worked farm and garden jobs alongside about 70 monks. The place is extremely traditional Catholic, like Latin-only mass, Gregorian chant, manual labor, rigid routine, and strict silence. The monastery's silence rule lined up perfectly with his legal restrictions because he was not allowed to talk publicly about the case at all, especially not to the media. The whole time he was still required to make restitution payments to the victims' families. The court also banned him from entering several regions of France. In 2022, when his electronic monitoring period ended, he left the monastery. The ankle bracelet came off, but that didn't mean freedom in any normal sense. He moved somewhere in the Indre region, basically in hiding, living off of a small retirement pension of about 800 euros a month. His legal obligations are still in place, though. He has to report any change of address. He's forbidden from contacting the families of his victims, and he can't appear in public or give interviews about his crimes. If he moves or leaves for more than 2 weeks, he has to inform his supervising judge. He still owes restitution, but with 800 euros a month, nobody's getting rich off those payments, okay? And if any of this sounds familiar, it might be because of Emmanuel Carrère's book, Les Adversaires from 2000, where he actually wrote to Jean-Claude in prison and exchanged letters with him before writing it. I couldn't get it on Libby. Okay, but from reviews and commentary, the author tries to walk a very thin line. He doesn't turn Jean-Claude into a cartoon villain, but he also doesn't excuse anything. It's intentionally neutral. But interestingly, apparently the part that bothered Jean-Claude the most in the book wasn't while the murders were being discussed. It was when he questioned whether his big religious awakening in prison was real or just another act. It's my first thought as well. Anytime someone becomes devoutly religious in prison, I'm like, okay, the show must go on, right? Am I right? Well, anyway, the book blew up, became a bestseller, and was adapted into a film in 2002, also called Les Adversaires. And that's the cautionary tale of a dude who could have literally just said, yeah, I didn't pass the exam, and instead speed ran his way from a lazy lie to a full-blown fucking fraud, a fake cancer patient, a fake World Health Organization doctor, and a wannabe monk with a murder record. And that's where we're leaving it for the week. That's no lie. I will see you next time. And until next time, if someone says they have a degree and you're questioning it, you must decree, show me the fucking certificate, you fucking weirdo. Did you actually graduate or not? Goodbye.